Kicking off the show today, looking at news from the front pages. A lot's been happening around the world in a week. That's been the third week of President Donald Trump's presidency in the United States. And a lot of the world's attention has been focused on a lot of his actions and words and, trying to understand what that means for countries around the world. But even here in Nigeria, a lot of very interesting, for want of a better word, things have been going on. We woke up sometime this week hearing that there's been a proposal to add 31 states to the already 36 that exist here in Nigeria. And a lot of us are trying to wrap our hands around that. Let's start the conversation today. Maybe my guests can help me understand. I'm joined now by Margaret Obolu at Justice Ojeno. Thanks a lot for being here today.
It's my pleasure.
I saw this and I wasn't sure what that meant. Is it a case of we're going to pick some from these 31? Or are we going to suddenly have 67 states? At a time when people are even saying the 36 are a little too much. What did you make of this?
So upon seeing that, my first impression was, what was the purpose? What is the purpose behind having more states? Because as it were, we're already having a lot of economic instabilities at this time. So I'm wondering first, what is the purpose behind this? And how is that purpose going to help us achieve economic prosperity, even at this time where we are joining issues? So that was really my first inclination upon seeing this bill. I'm dazed, but I'm trying to understand what the purpose is and how this is going to help us get to achieve economic prosperity as a nation.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of pending issues that have been, I don't want to say this is distracting us from that, but it looks like this is distracting us from that. So what is the purpose of establishing more 31 states, making that a total of 67 states, while we are here to get good grip on our organizational structure as a nation and attain leadership excellence? Thank you.
So, maybe in the past, when you hear stuff like this, you'll be like, they're just trying to... But we live in a world now when you can't take anything for a joke anymore. Because anything can literally happen. On the one side, there's the argument that, we need more states so that, development and, the impacts of government can be felt closer to the people. But on the other hand, you wonder, that's why we have local governments, right?
Absolutely.
What have we done to strengthen these local governments? Because state governments don't seem to want to relinquish these powers that they hold. Do more states solve this problem? Do we scrap local governments? Do we have even more local governments than the 774 that we have already?
Okay, for me, I actually think that I don't want to go the route of the generality of the people by just a la carte saying that it's all bad. We have to also look at what are the reasons for this clamor. And one of the major reasons is because of the hue and cry of injustice to the high heavens of some people who possibly and legitimately would have been marginalized. And I feel that is a major reason why some people are clamoring for some of these states. And some people too is just for identity purposes. They want to also be identified in the scheme of things, whilst we also cannot be over-speculating if we say that some people are out there for their pockets, that is the reason why they are pushing for these things. But if you leave me to my own will, I will say that out of the 31, I will endorse just one. And if you probe me further as to why I'm endorsing just one, I will say that the Southeast as a geopolitical zone has just 5 states, and I will especially appeal and endorse for there to be an additional state to at least bring them up to par with some 5 other geopolitical zones. It looks like we have one that will have 7, because if it is just every geopolitical zone having 6, then it would have been, the 36 states would have been 6 per geopolitical zone. So that we have one that has just 5, it means there is some great injustice somewhere. So whether there should now be proliferation of further states because we want governance to get trickle down to the last person on the street, I will not endorse that, because we know that the instrumentality of states, as we have a governor, we have the deputy governor, we have a full cabinet, the cabinet has special advisors, they have senior special advisors, they have special advisors with the special advisors, and he almost knows no end. So I feel that it's putting so much strain on the resources of states. So to that end, I will not go all out to endorse 31 states like that, but just one state, personally, to me, of course, a lot of people too, they are free to disagree with me on that point.
Do you not agree, like I said, with the fact that, I mean, many people will give you the argument that when we were regions, yes, there was some progress, regions knew what they were good at. The North was agriculture, all of that. But when we created states, certain regions, were more visible. Whether it's in the North, places like Ebonyi State, there were states that maybe were swallowed by bigger, state capitals or whatever you want to call it. Is that argument not tenable to say that maybe there are certain parts of this country where they may never see certain forms of development? Anambra State has this capital today as Oka. Before it was broken out of Enugu, Oka was a village, many will tell you, but development has come because it's the capital there now. Is that a tenable argument to say this is a way to bring some form of infrastructural development, besides the fact that, of course, running states are very expensive? You didn't even count the state assemblies and all the paraphernalia that comes with them. Is that an argument you can put forward for that?
Well, if that were to be the goal, as I said earlier, our goal would then be to strengthen our structures, because we already have a plethora of systems and structures that are, whether monumentally put in place or put in place for those purposes. If we can strengthen that, we can actually achieve that while also setting up our government in such a way that everybody is represented. If that is the case, then that would be fine. But I don't think that having more states will lead to us having a more inclusive society or nation, as it were. Because then you will have to consider, you have to put into consideration the government, there's state government, like you said, there is local government, then that will be replicating that all over again. For which set of people? If you are dividing the state, you are dividing the number of people there, it is still the same number of people. You are putting that, and you are putting, so out of them, they will be represented. Does that mean that in the wholesome phase, when they get to the federal level, those people will also be represented? Because then there will still be some states that will be bigger than others. So then they will still be lost in the maze of everything. Yeah. So I think we should just move. I would suggest we focus on strengthening our structures.
The entire constitutional drama is giving me a headache, because as you mentioned that now, every state has to have a minister, for example. Yes. So we're going to have almost 70. Let's move on to INEC. Because this week we did hear that INEC is going to prosecute, I think, over 700 electoral offenders from the last election. And it's weird to me that it took 2 years to get to this point where they're acknowledging that this is happening. We know that illegal procedures in Nigeria take time. But to even start this 2 years into after the election, when we know that the election season is already coming up again, also with INEC continually talking about, they were just minimal incidents during the last elections. What does this say to you?
Okay, for me, I feel that, let me just first state that time doesn't run out on crime. That's in our own legal system. In some other legal systems, they talk about a particular crimes are statute bad, so you can't prosecute it again. So I'm even happy that they are for the first time coming out to say they are prosecuting criminals. But 774 in particular, it will look like it is a huge number, but if you break it into number of local government,
one incident
it's one incident per local government, and you'll be living under a rock to say that in the past election that it was just one person that committed an electoral crime in even one ward, talk less of a local government. So I feel that, is a good step in the right direction, even though it's a drop in the ocean. And I pray that it doesn't stop at just prosecution. We should have convictions, because the essence really of criminal prosecution is deterrence. It is impossible for any country, I usually always say, it is impossible for any country to prosecute every single criminal that commits a crime in a state, because even in Nigeria, we have just our prison system is taking just 80-something thousand people, and that is like 0.00001% of the entire. And despite that, it's even busting to it seems. You can't even properly cater for them. So the essence really is deterrence. Prosecute, prosecute, prosecute. Bring your media, organize a media party, bring the media, let it go into the world that, yes, if you commit an electoral crime in this country, we will prosecute you and you will not go for free. At least that will serve as a deterrent to deter some people from even contemplating it.
Yeah. Most people have also talked about INEC itself, because a lot of people have opinions about how INEC conducted the last elections and, what they could have done differently and what they did wrong, and haven't admitted in many cases, even though people have shown evidence and all of that. So who prosecutes INEC? Do they prosecute themselves? Are they a part of this, particular process? A lot of people have questions with the organization itself, especially looking forward to another election. Even with these other elections that have happened since then, the state elections, there's been even bigger questions. A lot of them are in tribunals and the courts now. It makes you wonder, where do we go from here with INEC itself?
With INEC. Well, I feel for us as a nation, this is where we ourselves will now have to, as the government, I will appeal to the government, because it's not something we can do. But if you are appointing people to fill up bodies and organizations that should help also in ensuring that we have a free and fair election, we should have a process of selection, and there should be consequences for people. There should be that in place. So anybody going there knows that they too, they will be put under a microscope, they will be put under a bomb. So that is something the federal government has to really look into, because, okay.
Yeah. Maybe to both of you, let me start with you, because you are a lawyer, right? Why do we not have a system where electoral issues are resolved between election and swearing in? Why is it so hard? We see Ghana, for example. I think theirs is even just a month or thereabout between the elections and swearing in. The United States is about 2 months. You have that window to sort everything out, because there must be a president sworn in at this time. We have a system where people are sworn in, election cases are pending. If they lose, they now come out and we replace. Why are we still there? Why is it so hard? Because it seems like an indictment on the judicial system.
Oh, the judicial system is left holding the bag again. We are blaming the judicial system again, but we have to remember that the role of the judiciary, pursuant to Section 6 of our Constitution, is merely to interpret the provisions of the Constitution and the provisions of the laws, extant laws and regulations and guidelines, as in the case of INEC guidelines, that guide the prosecution of elections and also the litigation that comes afterwards. We must remember that these are as a result of our present constitutional provisions, the Electoral Act and the Evidence Act. And just like a lot of people have been clamoring since the fallout of the past election, we must ensure that before the next election, we amend our Electoral Act and the Evidence Act in particular. Let me give you a particular example. There's a rule against hearsay. The rule against hearsay says that it is only a person that heard something, that saw something, that felt something, or that smelled something that can give a testimony of that particular thing. So if something happened at a polling unit, for example, it has to be the person that saw it that will be able to give a testimony at the tribunal that this was the particular thing that happened at my polling unit. And that's the only time the electoral tribunal can strike off that particular polling unit. check out the number of polling units that we have in this country. It's in hundreds of thousands. So it means that if we want to prosecute, pursuant to our present laws, we have to compress all those witnesses into the witness box. And one witness will have to go through examination, cross-examination, potential re-examination. And that, Ebuka, is practically impossible within 1 month, within 2 months, within 10 years, I dare to say, because every lawyer has a right to examine a witness to his own satisfaction and cross-examine a particular witness to his own feel. So that is why I feel that in order for us to be able to have or enjoy what other clients are enjoying, like Ghana, America, or any other country that enjoys this kind of quick disposal of electoral issues pending inauguration, I feel that we need to amend the laws. Let me repeat it again. We need to amend our constitution, we need to amend our electoral act, and we need to amend the Evidence Act and the INEC guidelines, and ensure that the INEC guidelines too are enforceable in courts. If that is not done, we will cry the same cry that we cried in 2023.
Let me just give you one sentence before we go. I mean, a lot of these things seem like it's not going to happen before 2026 or 2027. You've seen the state elections that have happened. Edo is currently in the hot seats, basically. Yes. I think Anambra is the next one coming up. Are you confident going into the next general elections without a lot of these things being possible that INEC will deliver?
Like we said, if our goal is to ensure that we have a free and fair elections, there are structures that should be put in place to ensure that we have that. And most of what my colleague here has already said are part of the things we should look into. With all that has happened, everybody, I wouldn't want to say everybody because that would be, but for the most of the masses that are crying that, okay, this was not their choice. This is what they are saying. And to ensure that we give people, our results are based on a free and fair election, those structures should be put in place so that going forward into the next election, we can then be confident, because as at now, as it stands, with the structures put in place and everything on ground, I dare say.
It's going to be a long conversation. I mean, general elections are still far away, but because of how the elections keep coming up, it's an ongoing conversation. Thank you very much. We'll be watching the 31 states unfold in the coming days and weeks and months ahead. And of course, eyes are on INEC and the prosecution of these electoral offenders. I mean, we believe people who offend should be prosecuted, like you said, and face justice. Thanks a lot for joining us here today. We'll take a quick break now and we'll be right back. Please stay with us.
Don't just stand there teasing me. Now it's time to show